Stay. So if you've been following our blogs, you know that we've had a season of battery charger problems, of generator problems, and we've been watching boats sail by with these lovely solar panels on, not having to worry about half the issues that we've had problems with this season. When we looked into it before, solar was always outside of our budget. We thought if we could source some cheaper panels and do the work ourselves, we could probably afford it. So it was way back over a year ago now when we were in Lefkas, and we got into conversation with a fellow Amel owner called Dean Giles, and he had sketched up the design for his Amel for 3 Panasonic HIT 245 panels, and he quite kindly emailed us through his sketch of the circuit diagram that he designed for his boat. So this scrap of paper kind of gave us the inspiration to look into it a bit further. We're going to Tunisia anyway to get some jobs done, and I thought, just out of interest, I'd send a rough sketch of the type of thing that we had in mind, and the quote came back at €1,500, which was way cheaper than anything we'd had quoted on before. So we thought, we know what, while we're in Tunisia, we're going to be sat in the yard for 4 weeks. We needed dinghy davits anyway, so we thought, well, why not? It's not going to cost that much more to get the full arch made with a framework for the panels. Let's get it done. So the facilities were basic, but the skill level was there. So we went ahead and did it, and we thought, well, if we get at least a frame made for the solar panels, we could work out a budget for the panels and the installation at a later date. So once the arch was in place, it was kind of flexing a bit. It was kind of rocking from side to side, even while we were sat in the yard. So we had some diagonal supports put in as well, which were removable, so we could get down the steps and pull a dinghy on board if we needed to through the arch.
وهذا يقولوه ولا حاجه يدبر راسه يعمل له كيما نقولوا يعمل ولا نقبه نعمل له كيما شفت لازم تشد هيك وتشد هيك ما يحبسها انا ما تعرفش تعمل شي كابل منه وكابل منه بالطوندر.
I have no idea what they're saying. So we sailed away from Monastir with quite a lot of work done and the solar arch in place, but still no money for the actual solar installation. Thunderstorm coming.
You can see there that you put the solar panels on top so it collects more sun, and the boat looks really weird with it.
So after visiting the Balearics and Sardinia, we went down the east coast of Spain with the intention of wintering in Almerimar.
Yeah, we've still got big jobs to do. We've got some rigging to change, and we've got sails to replace, the solar panels to go on.
We still didn't quite have the budget for it, but we thought if we did most of the work ourselves, we could afford it. So we had this solar arch with no solar panels on it, but it was still useful, obviously, as davits. It was very handy with the dinghy, so we didn't have to bring it on deck. So the dinghy was stored quite happily on the back of the boat until
we were stern to on a kind of finger pontoon, and as we were leaving, the dinghy got caught on the cleat, and we managed to completely rip the sponson of our dinghy.
As the dinghy was hanging off the davits, it got caught on a cleat on a dock and basically ripped it open. It also put a lot of force on the davits, and it wasn't until we reached Almiramar, where we were going to do our wintering, that we noticed there were some hairline fractures in the gel coat along the base. I noticed these hairline cracks on the sugar scoop here, so we're just a bit worried there's a bit too much pressure coming off the davits here when the dinghy's actually on being hoisted up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinforce it by putting some fiberglass below the backing plate, and then put it all back together again. I can feel a lot of Sikaflex in that hole, so that's a good job I'm taking it out, because I can clear that out before we start feeding the lines through. But access is really difficult. That's one way of doing a two-man job single-handedly. So I've got the backing plate off here, so I'm just cutting some bits of fiberglass which are going to go behind the backing plate, just to strengthen up that that sort of sugar scoop area inside. It's a bit tricky to get to, but I think it'll be worth doing before we get the solar panels on and before we hoist the dinghy up as well again. So to pull the davits away from the actual section I'm working on, I've had to tie a rope to the bollard. Yeah, just gotta hope it doesn't spring back and cut my fingers off when I'm working. We made some really good friends in Almiramar. One of them was Werner from sailing vessel Chiringuito, I think I've got that right. So they do some chartering, but Werner's also a paint and epoxy expert, and he was keen to kind of exercise his skills by trying to get a gel coat match for our repair. And I've got to say, he did a fantastic job.
-10, 9016, the most white you can get.
You're going to mix it with the cream.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, 9001.
Yeah, the 9001.
When I put the fiberglass in to reinforce it, I kind of made it a bit too thick, and now the backing plates won't fit properly, so I'm having to scrape away some of that fiberglass, and I'm also having to trim the backing plates a little bit to fit in so it's a snug fit. But it's a bit galling when you spend all that time putting all the effort in to reinforce it and then having to kind of trim the reinforcing out so you can fit the old stuff back in. It's all a bit swings and roundabouts. So now I'm having to cut away most of the fiberglass that I've laid down just so I could get the backing plate back on. Okay, look away now because this isn't pretty. So finally, after doing loads of research and drilling down on price from UK suppliers, we've got some really good quotes and advice. So I'll just got to mention a few, which were the Renewable Energy Store, Select Solar, Solar Supplies UK, Solar Wind. But what came out cheaper was CCL in Glasgow, in Scotland. We did try and source some in Spain, but it was still cheaper to get them shipped in from Glasgow than sourced locally. We just found that the suppliers there just didn't seem that keen on supplying a small amount. Okay, this is exciting. The solar panels have just turned up all the way from Glasgow from CCL. Guys just dropped them off. I haven't checked them yet, so we're going to have a look now. Three Panasonic HIT 245 watt panels.
Once you know what the wattage is, you can work out the amperage. Once you know the amperage, you can work out what the resistance is by Ohm's law. Another good friend we made in Almiramar, and I've mentioned him already in some of the other blogs, was Ant from SV in Pavadis. He's a bit of a mechanical and electrical engineer, and he has taught the subject as well. I equals V over R, where I is the current. So he acted as my kind of electric mentor when we were there. He helped tidy up and firm up our circuit diagram for the solar installation.
He was also doing his own solar installation and did a video on it, so I'll put the link down below in the description if you want a bit more technical, in-depth information. Fortunately, I found an empty conduit, which is a bit rare on a boat, which apparently used to house, or is designed to house, the SSB transponder, and it isolates it from the rest of the cables so they don't get any interference. The shelf is kind of fiberglassed in place, and fiberglass is quite tough to get a drill through, but not impossible. So I'm going to put a 19mm hole through the shelf into the conduit, bring the wires into the circuit breaker, and then back out to the solar panels, and try and keep it all in a sort of a nice line. Otherwise I've got to start running it all over the place. Obviously I wanted the controller to be as close to the batteries as possible, but I also wanted it to be visible because it has some status lights. So the rule of thumb is you're supposed to keep the controller within 1.5 meters of the battery terminal or the battery shunt, but it does all Bluetooth to a smartphone as well. But I just wanted something a bit more visual, so I could just see in passing what the batteries were doing and how much solar was getting put into the batteries. Okay, so I've just stripped the wires. These are coming from the circuit breaker in the cabin, which then leads on to the solar panels. Obviously I haven't wired the panels in yet, they'll be the last things to do. There's always a debate going on about whether you should solder the ends or not, but I think because this is quite a chunky connection, I will solder the ends to make them nice and solid. That's great and it's all safe, but the only thing I'm worried about is it might be too long to fit in the cupboard because that is a massive switch. So here's the first cable. Set the locker outside, there's petrol cans in there, and I didn't really want to put any sort of wires or any joins where there's going to be petrol fumes. So I brought the circuit breaker inside the locker. And I've got the two feeds here, the two cables, two running from the nav station, two running from the solar arch. And it all comes into this locker here, and put the circuit breaker in place, and that should be that section sorted out. So I'm in the aft locker at the moment trying to figure out a way of getting these wires from the aft cabin, from the circuit breaker, up the tubes and into the solar panels, or onto the solar panel arch. I think I've found a fairly good run from the conduit to the arch, but it runs quite close to the bonding strap, which is kind of a very sort of sharp copper bit of strapping. So I want to just make sure that it doesn't rub on there. And this is where all of the kind of the heavy stuff gets put, like the gas bottles and the outboard engine and oars and things like that. So it's quite a big items, and if they're not strapped down, they kind of move around a bit. So I want to make sure that these wires are tucked well out of the way. So there's the conduit back there, which is designed to take the SSB antenna, and if I run the wires along here, I've got the mousing line for the solar arch. So I'm just going to fasten this cable on with some gaffer tape. So I've just taped another mousing line onto the original mousing line, independent of the cable, just in case that comes off. I mean, in hindsight, I should have done this mousing line twice as long and then tied this halfway along, and then if we did lose it, we've still got the mousing line all the way through. God, it's really tricky working in these small spaces. Okay. Stupidly, I forgot to mark the wires that went through the solar arch up here. Because both wires are black, I don't know which is positive and negative. So I'm having to do a continuity test on them to find out which is which. Okay, because the arch is made out of stainless steel and the frames of the panels are made of aluminium, I need to get some insulator. So I've got these kind of corner bits with self-adhesive on it, so I'm going to put these around the aluminium frame before it sits onto the stainless steel.
Yeah, it's obviously going to. The 3 solar panels don't fit in the brackets with these plastic protection bits on.
And even though it was measured correctly, obviously in the real world nothing is ever straight. So it's out by about 1 centimetre over the 2.4 metre span. So it doesn't actually fit in. So now we're having to take the plastic off and put some insulating tape. Hopefully that'll do the same job.
It's like it was before really, but with extra tape.
So I'm just going to crimp these ends on, and luckily the electrician Spencer from the local chandlery, he's got these hexagonal crimpers which are perfect, so be a bit careful because I don't want to destroy it. Okay, so that's a nice tight fit. Be a bit too tight. See, unfortunately I've deformed it, so that's going to have to come off, and we're going to have to do that again. So this is Duralac. It's an anti-corrosion compound that you put in between metals when metals join in a saltwater environment to stop the corrosion, because it basically sets up galvanic reaction as if it's a battery. So it means one of the metals are going to corrode. So this is great stuff for bolting, say, aluminium to stainless steel. The only problem with it is it's really sticky, and if it gets on your clothes, there's no way of getting it out.
No, this is just the same.
Just updated the firmware on the MPPT. I'm just going to log in now. And it's all looking good. Battery voltage 26.16. No solar connected at the moment, which is correct. No history showing in the app, but all looking good.
Are you ready? It's been great. We've never looked back. It was the best decision we ever made to get solar installation. Freezers, fridges, laptops, devices, lights, everything. The batteries have barely dipped below 90%, and usually the solar panels will have them fully charged again by mid-morning, afternoon. In fact, I'm actually thinking about getting some inverters put in to run the washing machine and the water maker, but that's a different job, and that'll go on the bottom of the jobs list for now. So that looks quite tight. Oh, no, it's coming off. Okay, cut. Trying to work out if we could afford So if you've been following our blogs, you'll work out how much we actually paid for it in the end. YouTube continued to block our comments. They're doing that with a lot of family blogs. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, don't forget to hit the notification bell, and give us a little bit of support. So if you do want to comment, please pop over to our Facebook page or the Patreon page and get a bit more involved in our journey. So a few people I'd like to thank for the video. Dean Giles for the first initial sketch that sent us down the road of getting solar, and from SV and Pavidus for all his help with the electronic work, Werner from Chiringuito for help with all the gel coat work, and Spencer from Alamar Centro Nautica in Almiramar for his help and advice with the electrical install. And it goes without saying, thanks to our patrons, without which none of this would be videoed and uploaded.
And if you want to do it, do it.